Hey everybody, Paul with you here. It is Saturday evening and I'm making it. You know what I mean? I'm making it through. So I should be okay for this week, and I've earned my paycheck for next week. So, because they hold back a week. Anyways, I hope you're all doing well. For my 15 people, I'm going to tell you now why you come to this channel. And why you come to this channel is you get a little smarter. And I'm going to tell you a story right now. And I'm going to tell you two, but the first one is going to be this video, and then the next one will be the next video. We are going to start out with what I believe was called the E-12 or A-12. It was an experimental jet. Actually, we shouldn't start out there. What we should do is start out by telling you that we were in a Cold War. And it was actually a little bit more than a Cold War. Right after nuclear technology, atomic power hit the scene, it was Russia and the United States, and they both had the bomb. So in the late 50s and in the early 60s, it was very tense. Our relations were not good at all. And there was a great competition to see, who controlled everything in the world. For a while, it was the United States. But Russia soon caught up. Now, this story is first about the U-2 spy plane. Now, I'll give you a little rundown. I'm not an expert on it, but I'll tell you what I heard today because I watched a whole program on it. And it was not on the U-2. The U-2 was the last of the conventional aircraft frames that they used. It wasn't a conventional, it was radical. But the U-2 was nothing really special. It was incredibly fast. And for a while, nothing could touch it. However, and it was piloted by Gary Powers, wasn't that his name? Gary Powers. He was a pilot, and he wound up getting shot down in one of those U-2s. And what the deal was is the Soviets kept getting better and better ground-to-air missiles, surface-to-air, what they call surface-to-air. And the powers that be in the military, they kept telling the U.S. Air Force to stop sending the plane up and into Russia because they were spying on Russia. And there was no attacks involved. It was simply reconnaissance. Just getting and mapping details and so forth. The thing was, the U-2, I do not know what its maximum speed was, but it was incredibly fast for its time. It outran most of the missiles, but in, 1962? That guy Gary Powers was piloting the U-2 spy plane, and they launched, I don't know, maybe as many as a half a dozen of those surface-to-air missiles on that U-2 spy plane that was in Russia at the time. And they shot it down, and he was lucky. Gary Powers, he was lucky to survive. He was taken captive by the Russians, and they were 100% right. That plane could not outfly a rocket. It's simple physics, because this is what they were telling them. With a plane, you have to have a pilot. And then it had this weird boom-style rear on it with a couple of rocket engines, which I believe were made by Pratt & Whitney. But I'm not sure about that. But they were really high-end engines. And they were incredibly fast for their time. But what they knew was going to happen is that a missile without any load on it would outrun any U-2. And that's exactly what happened. So they shot down the guy there I told you about, that pilot. And I think he survived. I think they got him back. And they knew Lockheed Martin made that plane. Lockheed. I don't know if it was Martin at that time, but it was Lockheed. And it was eventually Skunk Works. That's what I found out. And Lockheed, the mastermind there, owner, made it his point to make sure that he made a plane that was so incredible that to this day it holds all records, as far as I know, or nearly all records. And it's something I was happy to find out about, because I knew what the plane was. I have a couple little models of it, you know, the little things that hang on the Christmas tree and stuff. I forgot the name of those. Hallmark. I still got a couple of them. And now they've probably gone up in price. But anyways, I think it was in 1964. They came out with a revolutionary new plane. It had these massive Pratt & Whitney engines. Massive Pratt & Whitney engines. And at the time, I think it was right before my oldest sister's husband worked at Pratt & Whitney in New Haven, Connecticut. So he was probably just late for that action, but he built a lot of other ones. And he told me it was miserable. That guy used to come home, he used to work these massive hours. And in those production facilities, he said it was 113 degrees. And when he would come home, he would just get a tall boy Miller or whatever it was, tall boy beer. He would down it, lay down on that ground and sleep. And then I think he'd get up and go to bed and be up real early in the morning, 4 a.m. style, and get into work. So it was really something. He played a part in all of our motors, and Pratt & Whitney makes some damn good motors. I can attest to that. I was coming home from the Philippines one day, and we were trying to land in San Francisco, and it was fog bound. It was fogged in. And that's no problem, supposedly. They go on to instruments. So this pilot, these were Oriental pilots, and they came down, and I noticed it was taking a long time because, you know, we were buffeted around pretty good, but this went on for a longer time than I thought. And I thought we were still up in the clouds, except you start hearing that revving of the engine back and forth and all this kind of stuff. And when we came out of the soup, it was at around 25 feet, 35 feet. And when he came down, he realized that he was coming down on a plane. There was a plane. He was off around 15, 20 feet to the right. And there was a jet there. I saw it from my seat. So the next thing, and by the way, this was an MD-11. I think they used, I forgot, they called it the Mad Dog. As it were, they had some problems with it. The MD-11 was an amazing aircraft. It was they used two massive Pratt & Whitney engines, and they were massive because they were too powerful for the frame to begin with. But when that pilot saw he was coming down to the right, all he did was just took those levers and he put it back full power, and folks, we went up almost like this. It was just amazing. So I can attest to those motors being very powerful and very reliable too. The problems that they had with the plane was there was some sort of glitch where the pilots would, by natural reaction, they would press some button there on the you know, when he was there when they were there in the cockpit, and it would knock over something or trigger an automatic pilot defeat or something like that. I forget what it was, but it's very serious. And they were keeping track of that, and they had a few over a year's time or a year and a half time. So they had made mention of it, and they I don't know if they really tried to fix that. I don't know if they could have done anything about it at that point. But it was dangerous, and it wasn't just one pilot. A few pilots had made the same error. within, you know, a couple years or whatever it was, year and a half. But as far as the plane itself, the MD-11 was probably my second favorite plane, because my first favorite plane was the Lockheed L-1011, which was very similar to the DC-10, which had 3 engines, one shooting out the back of the rear rudder and one on each wing. And the L-1011 had it more molded in. The DC-10, it just looked like there was an engine, and it wasn't so smooth, but it was essentially the same plane. They were good planes, but the DC-10 experienced a lot of problems and a lot of crashes, unfortunately. The DC-10 and, what was it, the MD-9 or the 727, those were also involved in a lot of incidents too. So they anyways, we tried to land twice, that egghead pilot. So I felt him pull up the second time, and we were supposed to stay in our seat at that time, and I got up and I went over to one of those fuckable girls over there, because they just hire them for their fuckability. They don't understand anything one way or another. They're just eye candy for whoever comes on the plane. I mean, you know how they hire them over there. So I went over, and of course they don't understand you because they don't speak English. They only speak enough to whatever. So I went over, and I remember my exact words, because I was surprised on the first pass. It caught me off guard. When we came around the second time, I was gripping in as tightly as I could into my chair. And I had had enough. On the second round, he did the same thing, came off to the right. So he took off again, and I got up out of my seat, and I walked over to the one of the fuckable flight crew, or whatever it was there. And I told the little girl, I said, listen, I speak for everybody here. We want to come down in one piece. I don't care if we're late. I don't care if we have to go to Los Angeles and take a bus up there. Tell this pilot that I want to come down preferably in one piece. And the Chinese were busy doing Tai Chi, sitting in their seat, and they had the lead Tai Chi guy. They didn't give a fuck. So they told me, they guided me back to my seat and told me to behave myself. And then he tried to land a third time after it was in the run, and he said, folks, we are going to go to another airport. We can't land. We're going to land, but we're not going to deplane. I forgot the name of that airport, but it was close by, and it was very small. And we went there, and we sat on the runway for about 2.5 hours or 3 hours. It was a long time, and everybody hated me. I forgot the name of that, Pasadena. I forgot what it was. We were in up Northern California. I forget what it was. But anyways, but he backed out of the third attempt, and we landed at that airport. We stayed there for about 2.5, 3 hours. We took off, and it was so beautiful coming into San Francisco. For any of you that don't know, San Francisco is one of the most majestic, beautiful places in the world. I'll never forget when the pilot was going out, and it was all clear, and it was this time right here, like 7 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night. And I remember him coming in and just looking at, it was so beautiful. The scenic beauty is incredible. And we could see planes landing. I guess that's a big airport, and they've got like 3 landing strips and all that. And I remember it was nice. And then we got in, and then I took a bus into, because it was early or something. And I got it. My flight didn't take off until midnight, so I took a bus into San Francisco, and that was my only time. And we were close. I almost missed my flight. And I noticed that when I went on, I was wearing like a flannel shirt. And by the time I got out of there, after the sun went down, San Francisco, just for the record, is fucking cold. Just for the record. So those of you who don't know, when I say cold, I mean cold. I'm not talking 40 degrees. I'm talking about 30, 35 degrees. It is cold and windy oftentimes. So anyways, back to the story here. They put to sleep the U-2 project, and they had to build a revolutionary new plane. And Lockheed was very serious about it. And they changed, and you know what? I'll tell you something. I'm very suspicious of it. I don't like to believe in UFOs and all that. But I'm going to tell you something. If you looked at the U-2 spy plane, it looked like a plane that was updated from the 40s. And you know what I'm talking about, that style of aircraft. The SR, what would be finally the SR, my camera is doing something very strange. Hang on. Yeah, it's doing something very strange here. I'll have to try to continue with this and finish it out. They made that SR-71, and it turned out to be one hell of a plane. It went to 85,000 feet. It did very close to 2,500 miles an hour and set every conceivable speed record from New York to London and East Coast to West Coast and all of that. It was an incredible plane. So unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with this phone, and that is not good. But anyways, it was an amazing aircraft. It was a single seat fighter, and the thing that I will tell you that was most notable about it was that when they had to put it into maintenance when it wasn't flying, the fuel came out of it. They leaked. And it was because it was exposed to such intense pressure and at that speed, and it also got up to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit on the wings, if you can believe this. They used titanium and some other metals because lead melts at 810 or something like that. So it was an amazing craft, and they retired it finally. And the big stink about it, the big stink was that they said it was a pet rock because they had satellite. They had satellites everywhere at this point in 87, 88, and they said they didn't need them anymore. But they were reminded that those satellites only could circle so fast, so they could hide the things until the satellite went through, thereby justifying the idea that they still needed that SR-71 Blackbird. And it was called Blackbird because it was painted black. The black color did something to it. It did something to it. And it was beneficial for it. But anyways, it wasn't because of the color markings hiding or anything. It was some sort of reason about the temperature. And it was just ridiculous. They had to wear astronaut spacesuits because it was so fast and so hot. So that's a little bit on the SR-71, and I think it was called originally the E-12 or A-12. I forgot now. I know it's 12, but it essentially looked the same. And folks, that plane bore no resemblance to the U-2. That prototype that was based on that SR-71, I don't even know how they came up with it. When you look at the plane, you don't know how they came up with that. I guess it was a series of wind tunnel tests. And it was a radically different, it looked like a UFO. I mean, when people saw it at first, they thought it was a UFO. The military families saw that in the air in their top secret areas, and they thought it was a UFO. Looked very much like that. So, there you have it with the SR-71 Blackbird. And I will see you hopefully not so erratically on my next video. I'm very upset about this. This is a brand new phone. Take care, folks. I hope you enjoyed this. And I will be back for another amazing story. Bye.